You have probably watched 1,000 different videos about Messi's poor performances this season, and you probably thought twice before clicking this one, because well, it's getting boring. But trust me, this video is different. I'm not just gonna make vague statements like he's getting old or he's playing in a different role. No, we're gonna get down to the numbers. I'm not one to watch football through a spreadsheet or with a calculator at hand, but today we're gonna open an exception and pull out all of those 200 IQ stats, like post-shot expected threat creation percentages. Okay, maybe not that one, but we're getting a deep dive on one simple subject that has left everyone scratching their heads. How in the world did Lionel Messi, Mr. 50 goals a season, Mr. 7 Ballon d'Ors, only score 6 league goals in a full season, and now, in reality, he is still really good? Let's go. So you might have come across graphs like this over the last few months, and seeing how often Messi's season has been described as extremely poor, you might have wondered how is it even possible that he's still topping charts like this in just a devastating manner, still seeming to be levels ahead of any other player. Well, the answer is pretty simple, but still, it isn't obvious at first sight. Regardless, here you have his heat map from this season versus last season. If you pay attention, you can see he's been playing in a deeper role. I think the most notorious difference is how little time he spends inside the box now. Even when it comes to the areas just outside of it, there's clearly less volume, which could be a good justification for his rapidly decreasing goal-scoring stats, because if you know Messi, you know a curled shot from right outside the box has always been one of his deadliest weapons. However, if this map serves as a way to better understand his declining goal-scoring numbers, it also serves as a way to explain the first graph I showed you. If you don't check stats on your own, you could easily be surprised to find out that this season, Messi had 55% more assists than he did in his last one with Barcelona, an impressive achievement that is often disregarded and that made him the third player with the most assists in the top 5 leagues this season, only being outdone by his teammate Mbappe and of course Thomas Muller, who is an absolute freak when it comes to providing that final pass. Regardless, there's much more behind that number than you might expect, but first, we gotta look back. In his last season with Barcelona, Messi had only 9 assists, which given the fact that he had accumulated 10.8 expected assists, rounds up to a 20% underperformance. And for those who don't understand expected goals and expected assists and all that, well, a really simple explanation is that some guy took every place on the pitch and ran the numbers to calculate how likely the average player is to score from that position. And if you sum up all those values, you get the number of goals an average player would be expected to score given the chances that the player in question was presented with. Or in the case of expected assists, it just measures it from the position where the ball was received. That will probably have you asking, so you're saying Messi was 20% worse than the average player last season? Well, kind of, but not really. When compared to a player like Thomas Muller, who overperformed his expected assists this season by 59%, it can look really bad. However, back then, many were keen to point out that expected assists are greatly dependent on your teammates' ability to, well, put the ball in the back of the net. And given that Barcelona were in absolute disarray, it was no wonder that Messi's stats were so poor, because it wasn't necessarily him who was underperforming, but in reality, his teammates. And this theory got confirmed in a way the moment he joined PSG, because with world-class finishers like Kylian Mbappe by his side, this season he has outperformed his expected assists by a mind-boggling 75%, even more than a madman like Thomas Muller could achieve, even with a finishing partner like Lewandowski, or shall I say Lewandowski. However, those assists also have a negative aspect, as 65% of them were obtained while playing against teams who were battling for relegation, which in a league like that is especially punishing, since PSG has an overwhelming monopoly over it. Just take a second to think that 8 of those 14 assists came against Saint-Étienne and Clermont Foot, whose squads when put together are worth 148 million, which is only a bit less than Messi earned by himself in 2021 according to Forbes. Just a bit of perspective, I guess. And in case you're wondering, that same viewpoint still applies to his 6 goals, with none of them being scored against the top 6 in the league. But all of this is probably not helping my point that Messi's season has been much better than you may think. So let's get back on topic and try to see the bright side of what has most likely been a season to forget. So, though Messi has always been exceptional when it comes to progressing the ball, most often, or at least most characteristically, it would be defined as a dribbler. However, he has also always been exceptional at earning those yards through passing. But he always played with a handicap, and that was being an overly offensive player. Looking at the top ball progressors in Europe, there's no doubt whatsoever that players in defensive or deeper roles have a much easier job at achieving spectacular numbers. Look at Kimmich, Kroos, Renato Sanches, or even fullbacks like Alexander Arnold or Jordi Alba. It's pretty straightforward if you think about it. The deeper you play, the more space in front of you through which you could progress the ball will be available, in the same way that, for example, defensive midfielders also excel at long balls, like for example, Ruben Neves. But now you're already aware that Messi has been playing closer to a midfield position, so if you add 2 and 2 together, you won't be very surprised to hear that this season Messi has managed to accumulate progressive passes at a higher rate than in any of his last 4 seasons. And if the heat map from the start of the video wasn't enough to convince you of this, let me tell you that not only has he had 14% more touches in the defensive and midfield thirds of the pitch than last season, but also 33% less in the offensive third of the pitch, meaning that in proportion, his game became about 60% less prone to offensive touches. I think this is where the real problem with his recent performances stems from. You see, I'm not going to say this is 100% true, but one of the main criticisms Messi has had to deal with throughout his career was that he was a system player, that Barcelona's playing style had been built around him, trying to get the most out of someone who is undoubtedly one of the greatest of all time. And that is more than enough justification to do something like that. However, many felt that this, paired with the fact he grew up at the Barcelona academy, had shaped him to be the kind of player who would massively struggle to adapt to another club. It's just human nature. Over the years, he became more and more suited for Barcelona, and Barcelona became more and more suited towards him, which meant only bad things could come for both parties if they were to be separated, and that's probably what happened. There's no denying that at Barcelona, Messi was allowed to have usage rates that were unfathomable to any other player in any other club, and it would be impossible to replicate the sort of play style he got used to without those usage rates. Just taking the 18-19 season as an example, in that single league season he was dispossessed 680 times. If you think that sounds absurd, you're right, because it wouldn't be conceivable anywhere else. This season, now playing with PSG, he has only been dispossessed 261 times, which is a 62% decrease. If you watched my other Messi documentaries, you saw me talking about Messi dependencia, a phenomenon coined by the Spanish media referring to how Barcelona was completely dependent on Messi, something that at the time seemed extremely toxic for the club, but now seems to have also been extremely toxic for Messi. Without being allowed those same usage rates, one thing that is quite clear is that Messi's dribbling has also suffered. When taking a look at his successful dribbles per 90 minutes, it's obvious that with age, ever since he was 20 years old, he slowly declined, which makes a lot of sense, as dribbling is often a skill that's most associated with younger players, but in the last season, the drop-off was more shocking than ever. From nearly 9 successful dribbles per match in 2008, he is now down to just 3, which almost makes him seem human for a second, but remember, it's mostly down to the usage rates, at least in my opinion. If you look at the metrics that aren't swayed by them, like his dribbling percentage of success, you will see that this season he was at 65%, when, for example, in 18-19 he was only at 61%, so clearly it's not like Messi has lost his touch whatsoever, it's just that the team isn't playing in a way that allows him to put the full extent of his capabilities at display. For comparison, great world-class dribblers like Bernardo Silva, Vinicius Jr. and Neymar have all finished their seasons with lower success percentages than Messi, so it's hard to assess why he isn't as confident in his dribbling as he used to be. But I'd guess it's between coaching decisions or just the mental aspect of not feeling home anymore. For example, I've seen a few Porto supporters joking about how Luis Diaz is nowhere near as audacious at Liverpool as he was here, and that's most likely because he feels like the new guy, like his teammates aren't familiarized enough with him for him to be able to afford messing up, you know what I mean? And I guess the same might apply to Messi. And when it comes to his goals, I think the answers are even more simple. First of all, Messi is substantially underperforming his expected goals by a margin of 40%, when normally it would do the exact opposite. For example, in his last season with Barcelona, he actually outperformed them by 27%. But in reality, this doesn't mean Messi just suddenly became a bad shooter. It's just that expected goals are heavily influenced by luck, especially at a smaller scale, which given the fact he scored just 6 league goals definitely applies. And I can hear you already, yeah, luck is very subjective and hard to quantify, but hear me out. Just in this league season alone, Messi hit the woodwork 11 times, that's almost 1 every 2 games. Ever since that sort of data has been recorded by any agency, no player has ever managed to hit more than that in a single season. It's an all-time record, it's absurd, it's so unlucky, it's almost funny. There were 43 players that scored more goals than Messi in the league, and if those 11 shots had actually gone in, and yes, I know, if my grandma had wheels, she would have been a bike, but still, if they did, it would be the 6th player with the most goals in the league and the 2nd with the most goal contributions. And this is not even taking into account one thing that I think was a huge deal when it comes to this matter. PSG have Mbappé. He's their target man, he's their star, he's apparently even a part owner of the club now, but I guess that's off topic. My point is that though at Barcelona, Messi was very clearly also a creator, he was obviously a target man as well. And like any other in its service, preferentially lots of it if you're trying to get the most out of him. But at PSG, he's not even the main man. Mbappé not only has been there for longer, is younger, faster, great at getting in positions to score, and an impressively clinical finisher. The same way Messi arrived as a young boy at Barcelona and the team was built around him, so has PSG been in a way built to serve Mbappé. After so many years, the players are extremely predisposed to look for him when trying to find someone to assist, and so Messi only gets the scraps, which, put together with the inherent shyness of being the new player, was also what probably led him to conform into his new, deeper role and therefore made him less of a danger towards the opposition's goal. And that shift in the balance between target man and creator, as well as the more timid approach to progressing the ball, can easily be seen in this graph, with every side of his game seeming to be in a downward spiral, with the most heavily affected being receiving, and passing very clearly going against the wave and becoming better than ever. If somehow after all of this you're still doubting that Messi is still a world-class player, doubting that much of what has happened is due to circumstance, let me show you something. This table compares many of Messi's attributes/stats with other French league attacking midfielders and wingers, and as you can see, is still in the 90th percentile for so many key stats, from the obvious assists to expected goals per 90, which could have made for a really impressive goals tally, but like I told you, he's been unlucky, as oversimplified as that may be. He's also outperforming everyone in pass completion, key passes, goal-creating actions, dribbles completed, progressive carries, you name it. In the end, Messi is, just like many other great players, a victim of his own standards, because if you were to evaluate him like any other player, then how could you possibly say that a player that has a higher dribbling completion than Vinicius Jr. and that provides more assists per 90 minutes than Kevin De Bruyne is possibly in any way having a bad season? By the way, if you like these sort of stats, do me a huge favor and get Gazippo Opinions to 16k followers on Twitter. This video wouldn't have been possible without his incredible content. It's a really great account, you should check it out. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. See you next week. Bye.